Namaste. Welcome to this interview with Prem and Radha from Bali. They are one of the most experienced Ashtanga yoga teachers in the world, and I'm excited to learn from them and to get to know how Ashtanga yoga came to them and how they are passing it on now. So possibly we start with you, Prem.
Okay.
What was your first experience of Ashtanga yoga? How did you come in the Ashtanga yoga method, in the Ashtanga yoga tradition, and what was the thing that really hooked you into the practice?
All right.
Just flip it on.
Okay. So, yeah. A walk down memory lane.
Yes.
Yeah, it was something that happened to me back in California, in Southern California. So I wasn't necessarily interested in yoga, but some friends of mine said that I should attend this class. And they said it was an Ashtanga class. And I thought to myself, yoga, I don't want to do yoga. I was very athletic at the time, surfing and playing basketball. And I knew about yoga from as a young child, just a memory of it. And I thought yoga is not going to be for me. But they said, no, it's Ashtanga. You're going to really like it. It'll capture you. So I said, okay, I'll go. So I went to my first class and I watched the first time. I just sat in the room and watched advanced people practice. And that was it. That's all it took. Because I was watching like the things you were doing today in class. People were doing advanced series and, putting their feet on their head. And it was this gymnastic, exercise, but with a focus and a clarity about what was taking place. I had this feeling in me that it was like, oh, I want to know this. So that's what first captured me. And then about 3 months later, Pattabhi Jois showed up.
Who was the first teacher?
His name was Gary Lopadoda and Brad Ramsey. And they were the two students that worked directly under David Williams.
Mm-hmm.
And so this was in 1978. So at that time when I started, 3 months later, Pattabhi Jois came to America. So I was a pure beginner. And 3 months into it, this master of Ashtanga yoga shows up. And then all these people from Hawaii came. So our room went from maybe 20, 25 people to 40 people. It was just, packed full of people. And Pattabhi Jois stayed there for around 6 months. And we practiced with him every day at that time. So that was my initial introduction. And then the following year I went to India in 79. I was like the first official group of Westerners to show up in Mysore.
This was 79.
79, yeah. There were individuals that were going, but not like, there was 6 of us that showed up in Mysore in 79. And he invited everybody. There was 40 people there and he said, oh, you please come to Mysore. And 6 of us came.
Mm-hmm.
And 2 of the people were my teachers, was Gary and Brad. I went with them and their partners and a few people. So yeah, that's how it all began for me.
Wow. Thank you.
Sure. Sure.
Just pass it over to Heather.
To Radha.
To Radha. One moment, I'll possibly. And same question for Radha. Excited to hear.
Okay, let's see if I can get this on, or if not, I'll just hold it.
It's a clip.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So my beginning with yoga was a little bit funny. I was 19, right before I turned 20. It was the beginning of 1990. And I was living in Malibu, California, with one of my best friends that I still have today. And out of the blue, I decided that I wanted to try yoga. I heard this word yoga. I didn't really know anything about it. But I decided I was going to look it up in the yellow pages of the phone book. So I went to the yellow pages and I looked up the word yoga, and I found this school called Yoga Works. And I thought it was kind of cool. It had a nice little logo. And I called them up and I said, oh, I'd like to come for a class. And they said, how old are you? And I said, at the time, I think I was 19. I was almost 20. And they said, oh, okay, you come to Ashtanga prep. So I said, okay. So I went one day, and it was at 10:30 in the morning, and there was I think there was 4 people in class, and it was Chuck Miller. Chuck Miller was my very first teacher. So I was quite blessed for that. And he taught like a semi-guided Ashtanga, like a half primary type class. And after the class, I walked out of the yoga room and I said to Chuck, I think I'm going to be a yoga teacher one day. And he kind of looked at me like, really? So that was my introduction. And then 5 years later, I made the trip in 1995 to see Pattabhi Jois. So yeah, a little bit brief there, but
thank you. Yeah, and so you were mostly hooked about this magic of the breath and the self-practice. And how do you keep up this inspiration that hooked you to Ashtanga yoga? Is there a special technique or way that you keep it up in your current teaching, or has it completely changed your current teaching and you're teaching something completely different than what you hooked up? What was hooking you up first? Prem?
Yeah, I think what keeps me inspired is the ongoing research that I've continued through the decades of doing my own spiritual work, my own mental, emotional work, my own physical work, and discovering more and more about myself. So that has to be central for me to be able to be inspired to teach. And out of that, being around hundreds, if not thousands of students and seeing the things that work for me from my own research and my own practice and learning from other teachers, and then implementing that to the practice and seeing what fits for each individual. Because it's an individual practice, even though it appears to be everybody do the same thing, like a set sequence, and everybody do Surya Namaskara A, B, the standing. We've been able to come together and work with each individual appropriately and in the best way possible for them to get the most out of their practice so that they can keep practicing on their own or in a group. You want to say something?
Yeah, I think I can really tag on to that. And I think what's different for me now than maybe when I started teaching 25 years ago or 30 years ago is that in the beginning, I taught in a way that I had to follow everything in a particular manner. Oh, if I didn't teach the adjustment this way, it was wrong. If I didn't teach the pose that way, it was wrong. And that's really changed a lot, especially with teaching with Prem and being with Prem, because we both focus so much on having an Ayurvedic lifestyle. And so that is really important to bring in that individuality to the teaching. And really, as Prem just said, like really seeing each person as an individual. And even if you're teaching them the same pose or giving them a similar adjustment, it's still going to be really, really different. So my whole aspect and outlook has changed over the years as opposed to in the beginning. I think that keeping that individual spirit when you look at each person is really an important part of teaching.
Wow. Well, thank you. So it's this individuality in both of your teachings. It's one of the aspects. What is your definition possibly a tricky question. What's your definition of a beginner? Of a beginner yogi? Whoever first wants.
Go ahead. You feel inspired.
All right. Well, you know, one thing that I always say is that sometimes someone will come into the room and they might know everything, all the poses and everything, but maybe they're not focusing on the breath or the foundation. And then sometimes there'll be somebody that comes into the room and they don't necessarily understand all the movements, but they have the focus. They have an understanding of foundation. So I think if I was to say what makes a beginner is, or let's look at it from the outside, what makes an advanced practitioner is somebody who has the focus, somebody who can be in the present moment. Not necessarily, okay, if they can do advanced things, that's also great, but can they do the advanced things with focus, with breath, with foundation? So I think that sometimes I'm quite surprised. You know, we'll have a beginner student that is really like, wow, they're really catching on quickly to the elements, not just the poses. So that's how I would describe the difference between the two. You want to add to that?
Yeah. I think it's more of a qualitative difference. You know, you can show up at any point within the practice. And someone like yourself who's been practicing a long time, you can still come in with kind of a beginner's awareness and be open to learn something, right? That's what I love about you, is that you're open and you're willing to receive information and feedback to your own practice. So you're keeping that beginner's mind, so to speak.
Yeah.
And from that, it's an endless journey. So we're always beginners. We're always able to learn more and more about ourselves. And that's what I see the journey being, is that it's this ongoing discovery process. And the yoga practice, the physical yoga practice, is a mirror that's being put up in front of us to look at ourselves. And a good teacher is going to they're going to keep throwing people back into themselves to look from inside out, as opposed to how many poses you have or how good you look in it. It's the overall quality that you're maintaining as you practice. So that's kind of my take on it.
One of the things that Chuck Miller used to always emphasize was he could teach samastitihi to anyone, and you're just standing, what you think is just standing, and you could just break into a sweat with the focus and the breath and the attention to foundation. And that really would stand out to me, like, how could you take this simple standing pose and make it so advanced? So that's also another way of looking at it as well.
Yeah, I think we have the tendency to get too caught up in the advancedness of the actual posture, whereas you can make something like samastitihi, the standing poses, quite advanced and quite detailed from the standpoint of the quality of your breathing and the energetic, happening that's there in the poses. So that's what we really look for. We're looking for the quality in the person, the receptivity, of the student to receive and explore. We tell them, I say especially, don't listen to what I say. Check it out and see if it resonates for you. Okay. If it does, then, be my guest to incorporate that into your practice. Agreed. But at least be open to explore in the way that we are going about it, to see how it resonates.
I always remember you saying, from the last time I visited you, you were saying, try it in demo mode, which I think is a really beautiful idea. You explained, like, when you're here in the class and you say something, try it, go for it, look how it feels. And if you notice after 1 month or however long you stay, it's not working, then throw it away. If it's working, delete it. Exactly. Then if it's working, go on for it. And something which inspired me in my practice, certainly, So when I'm here, I really want to learn something new.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
Certainly, I did Ashtanga yoga for, I think, 30 years now. quite a time, but it's like you said, it's always new, and there's always things. Certainly, I have opinions about things, but I try to go in demo mode and try it. Mm-hmm. And also when I'm teaching, I inspire my students to have the same thing, because very often, especially in Ashtanga yoga, I have students who come to me, especially if they come from another teacher, and they have a very firm opinion how it is. And if I'm the teacher, they have one option, not teaching at all. I can say, oh, do whatever you like. Sometimes I do this. But on the other hand, I can also, but it's like, it's also a pity. People come and they want to learn something, but then my count is a little different than what they learn from somebody else, or I recommend them to put the food 85 degrees instead of what they learned 90 degrees. And this can be a big hassle. Yeah. And so I recommend my students, when you practice with me, go in demo mode, try it out. If 85 degrees works better than 90 degrees, that's possibly a good idea. If not, after the practice, you can do whatever you want. So it was a very inspiring idea. What would be your most important advice for somebody who would like to start Ashtanga yoga? So somebody who, let's say, read the internet or sees this interview we are doing and says, oh, this is interesting, Ashtanga yoga is interesting. How to get started? What's the first steps to take?
Okay. They're fascinating to me. I think that when someone's starting in the beginning, hopefully they find a good teacher and there's a good connection that's there, and a teacher that can help them learn in a manner that's consistent and not necessarily all at once is what I'm trying to get out. So, kind of taking things step by step and really learning the foundation first. I mean, that's my background from when before I met Pattabhi Jois. Chuck Miller in particular focused on foundation, how to use the legs, how to use the feet. And you never forget that kind of work. And I think that it's really helpful for a new student to really understand the breathing, the bandha, the foundation, and then go deeper. Sometimes the opposite happens. They learn a lot of poses, but then they're confused about how to accomplish them or how to do them. So maybe sometimes slow and steady is better than quick, and just, pacing yourself is maybe a better way to say it.
Yeah, I agree with what you're saying there. I think it's important for people to show up to the Ashtanga method in the most humble way possible, because it is a very intense practice. And in order to do it correctly, if I could say that correctly, you have to tread lightly. You have to go in with this humble attitude and learn the foundation of the practice, because that's going to guide you. That's the way I teach, is from that intuitive place. And so that's what you have to cultivate within yourself. That feeling of what works, like what you were saying, of turning the foot a little bit. Is that going to help you to be more balanced and more grounded? And does it give you an activation of something that makes the practice more fluid? So all those things we have to kind of discover for ourselves. And again, a good teacher is going to help facilitate that.
Yeah, and the intermediate student, I always have the feeling he or she gets a little lost in the consideration. So how to go to the next step? So first you go to a teacher and you practice regularly. You find the foundation, the footwork, the legs, the breathing, the bandhas, and then how to get to the next step, to the, let's say, intermediate step, not talking about a series, but to get to
the next level.
The next level. What even is the next level of a practitioner?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, to me, it just follows along naturally. That's why I think it's so important to have the setup in the beginning. If you really understand the breathing and the bandha and the foundational aspect of the physicality, it's normally rolls into becoming more intermediate, becoming more advanced. Whereas if the opposite happens, and maybe you learn a lot of advanced or intermediate poses, meaning like just not from the series, but you just learn a lot of intermediate or advanced poses in yoga, but you don't have the foundational aspects, then what I believe happens is you have to go steps back to go forward again. Whereas if you learn it in the beginning, it just is an ongoing, you're kind of just moving forward. But I think sometimes if you learn too quickly, then you get to a point where you plateau. And if you really want to go further, then you have to take steps back to go further. That's my feeling about it. I don't know if I'm expressing it correctly in the way that I'm feeling it, but that's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a very interesting method. You know, this whole, again, I look at it as the classroom setting is like a laboratory for me. It's like I have all these subjects there, and it's the combination of the things that I know, of the principles of the practice. How am I going to apply it to that particular individual? And so I can see within the context of each individual where they're at. Are they beginner? Are they advanced? Or are they intermediate level of understanding the principles? And then I can speak to them from that standpoint. And I can give them something that's a little bit more intermediate or a little bit more advanced. I can take them a little bit deeper physically because I know that they're maintaining their breathing. They're maintaining an awareness that they can go deeper as opposed to just going deeper just to go deep.
I agree.
And say, look what I did. I grabbed my heels in a back bend or whatever it is.
Yeah, I think, in the first 10 years of my practice, I was focused primarily, unknowingly, on doing gymnastics.
Yeah, I think we all.
And that's, I'm not like saying that to criticize that, but that I didn't really have an understanding of really what the breath was and what it really meant. I was more concerned with how deep I could go, particularly with back bending or leg behind the head, because I knew that would get me the praise from the teacher. So I didn't quite understand. And I would say in the first 10 years, it was like, okay, I want to do this well. I want to go deep. But now I know I want our students to know that going deep should be just a gift that comes after you have the understanding of why you're going deep, as opposed to putting it on the first step.
And you may never get to that place.
Yeah.
In your posture.
Absolutely. That's such an important point, because I think sometimes people look at Ashtanga yoga and they say, oh, I can't do Ashtanga yoga because I'm not advanced. And now I know, like, wow, really has nothing to do with that. That's the beauty, I think, with age. You get a different wisdom and you appreciate simplicity more.
And that's how we can apply this to anyone who shows up. Like you were speaking before in our conference the other day about the kind of students that you're getting. You're getting 50-year-olds, you're getting 40-year-olds, people that maybe have injuries and different things. It's like you have to really work with them. You have to really find a way to manage how they can go through the sequence in the most beneficial way.
Yeah. And that's what makes it inclusive. That's what makes yoga for everybody. That's what makes it inclusive. And I think one of the things that Pattabhi Jois said many, many years ago is yoga is for everybody and not owned by anybody. So technically, when we teach the practice of Ashtanga yoga, we should be able to have anybody come into the room at any age and teach them something, whether they can do all the poses or not.
Yeah, I think that's what gets lost in translation. Like the religiousness of this particular method, that if you're not doing it in a particular way, then you're not doing Ashtanga, which is completely not what I believe or feel. Because you can apply. We have people in the room right now
That's right.
that are not they're not even resembling anything of Surya Namaskara or anything, but we're having them do something to breathe and move and feel their body, and they're getting benefits.
Absolutely.
Wow, thank you. That was very inspiring, especially the last words. I think rated was quite an important point. That it doesn't really matter how flexible the body is. It's more mattering how good focus you can get in the practice, how you feel your body, you feel your breath. Yeah. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thanks for
asking us.
Namaste. Thanks for watching. Namaste.